Good afternoon, and welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Disciples and Devotees. Today, once again, our brother Kittu. Namaste.
Thank you.
And we are on chapter 10 of the ideal
United States of Europe.
Chapter 10 of the ideal of human unity, and the chapter is United States of Europe.
Yeah. Today I shall read out because the ideas are very, very important and we have to try to understand them in some depth. So merely explanation. When necessary, I will explain. So we have had to dwell so long upon the possibilities of the empire group because the evolution of the imperial state is a dominating phenomenon of the modern world when he wrote this book. Today, it is very difficult to have empires. It governs the political tendencies of the later part of the 19th and earlier part of the 20th centuries, very much as the evolution of the free democratized nation governed the age which preceded ours. So now this is where I want you to go back. See, because basically we are talking about ideas which become forces. Ideas remain in the mind and gradually become forces, come down to the physical and vital level, and then the implementation and the change in the world takes place. So see now, the dominant idea of the French Revolution was the formula of the free and sovereign people. And in spite of the cosmopolitan element introduced into the revolutionary formula by the ideal of fraternity, this idea became in fact the assertion of the free, independent, democratically self-governed nation. I will explain a little bit. The French Revolution broke out in 1789. And it threw three words: liberté, égalité, fraternité. That means liberty, equality, and fraternity. Right? Practically, the only word that was really given a practical shape was liberty. Equality and fraternity had to wait for the Russian Revolution, 150 years almost. Right? So, that ideal, that is, democratically self-governed nation, had not at the time of the Great War wholly worked itself out even in the Occidental world. That means even European nations had not all become free. For Central Europe was only partly democratized, and Russia had only just begun to turn its face towards the common goal. And even now, there are still subject European peoples or fragments of peoples who are not free, who don't have liberty.
Russia had just to turn its face. What year?
Had turned its face slowly towards democratization.
What year?
It is not a year, it is a period in the 19th century. Right? It was moving towards freedom because the Tsars were very, very dominant, right?
It had to be before 1970. Because the Tsars were so dominant. Yes.
What?
The Tsar was so
very,
dominant.
very dominant, right? And also, I think they are known as the kulaks, the huge farmers, big farmers. They were dominant. It was turning its face slowly towards liberty, little by little. But then you will see the next thing. Their real change came in 1917. Nevertheless, with whatever imperfections, the idea of the free democratic nations had practically triumphed in all America and Europe, more or less. The peoples of Asia have equally accepted this governing ideal of the 19th century. And though the movements of democratic nationalism in the eastern countries Turkey, Persia, India, China were not fortunate in their first attempts at self-realization, the profound and widespread working of the idea cannot be doubted by any careful observer. This is the key sentence. It is only in the 19th century that in India we demanded for liberty, and Sri Aurobindo gave it a tremendous push when he joined politics. Before that, there was a kind of feeling in India among the educated elite class that it is a blessing that the British are ruling us, and I hope that this continues. See, now, this is the power of the idea. An idea which was sown in 1789 in France, which took some time to establish itself in Europe, spread over into Asia, into Africa, into South America. Its realization and its actualization might take time. So it is very important to understand that the power of the idea. So from the power of the idea, it is after conceptualizing, you put it into practice. See, this is very, very important. And that is why I repeatedly tell people who come and criticize what is happening in Auroville, which is absolutely right, a lot of unpleasantness. Say, don't worry about that. Here there is not only idea, there is also a force. But even if that force you keep away, the idea itself is so attractive, so beautiful, that tomorrow or day after tomorrow or whatever the time it takes, it is bound to get effective. Right? And depending on us, it can take a very short time. And if that idea is put into practice and is successful in any part of the world, it will have its impact all over the world. See, that is why it is throwing the idea. So the French Revolution threw these three ideas. One idea became very, very powerful, the idea of liberty. So, whatever modifications may arrive, whatever new tendencies intervene, whatever reactions oppose, it could hardly then be doubted that the principal gifts of the French Revolution, very important, the principal gifts of the French Revolution must remain and be universalized as permanent acquisitions. What are these? Indispensable elements in the future order of the world: national self-consciousness and self-government, freedom and enlightenment for the people, and so much social equality, at least, as is indispensable to political liberty. For with any form of fixed and rigid inequality, democratic self-government is incompatible. I'll read it again. National self-consciousness and self-government. See, now remove the word national and put individual. Individual self-consciousness will inevitably lead you to demand individual self-government. I will govern myself. I will not be pushed about by others. When you are not at that stage, you are part of the mob. I can make you do what I want you to do. So the first stage in self-mastery, self-control is self-consciousness. You must become aware of yourself. And then you will see what is necessary to do. Then a stage will come when every act that you do is decided by you. And this is indispensable in spiritual life. You cannot change anything because somebody wants you to change. You will change only when you have decided to change. And then you will see the problems and the difficulties, and then you will handle it. And there you can seek your Guru's help and go on. So very important, national self-consciousness and self-government, freedom and enlightenment for the people. and so much social equality and justice as is indispensable to political liberty. Now, what is political liberty? The right to vote. Once in 4 years, once in 5 years, that is political liberty. So, that is one. The next one is the right to associate. That means we can all join together and form a party. The whole political system is based on party, right? In China, there is no political liberty because there is only one party. And within that party, they give you some freedom. But if I want to start another party, I don't have that political liberty. So this is a very important stage. We are not speaking of social equality at all, just political liberty. The right to choose my rulers, right? So for with any form of fixed and rigid inequality, democratic self-government is incompatible, right? So this is the first thing. So now today, I don't think there are many countries, almost all, have opted for democratic self-government, which means that they have become nationally self-conscious, which inevitably will lead to the demand for self-government. Okay? Right. But before the great 19th century impulse could work itself out everywhere, before it could even realize itself entirely in Europe, a new tendency has intervened, and a new idea seized on the progressive mind of humanity. So you see, a new tendency, new idea. This is the ideal of the perfectly organized state. I'll read a little more, then I explain. Fundamentally, the ideal of the perfectly organized state is socialistic and is based on the second word of the great revolutionary formula, equality, just as the movement of the 19th century centered around the first, liberty. So you see now, liberty was given a scope for extending itself, especially in Europe. But equality had not yet come. Now, that is the question. Will equality come naturally and spontaneously by the haves sharing with the have-nots? Or will some kind of force be needed? Human nature being what it is, some kind of force has to be imposed. That is where the state comes in. So socialism means always the state. And then there are varieties of the state. The state will govern everything, state will govern something, state will govern very little. That depends on the evolution, circumstances, etc., etc. So, fundamentally the ideal of now the first impulse given by the great European upheaval attained only to a certain kind of political equality. An incomplete social leveling still left untouched the one inequality and the one form of political preponderance which no competitive society can eliminate. The preponderance of the haves over the have-nots. So in a competitive society, you can't have equality. Some will move up, some will move down, inevitably, right? The inequality between the more successful in the struggle of life and the less successful, which is rendered inevitable by difference of capacity, unequal opportunity, and the handicap of circumstance and environment. So these three things do not allow us to have inequality. Now follow, this is very important. Socialism seeks to get rid of this persistent inequality by destroying the competitive form of society and substituting the cooperative. So no more competition, cooperative. A cooperative form of human society existed formerly in the shape of the commune. But the restoration of the commune as a unit would imply practically the return to the old city-state. And this is not now possible with the large groupings and great complexities of modern life. The socialistic idea could only be realized through the rigorously organized national state. Do you agree with this? To remove inequality, you need a rigorously organized national state.
Can you explain more what is this
Huh?
rigorously organized national state?
I didn't.
Can you explain more about rigorously organized national state? I don't understand what is it.
See, which means that individual freedom is taken away. It is a state that controls everything, and not little bit, rigorously controlled, organized state. That is the government everywhere in the world. Whether it is rigorous or less rigorous or hardly rigorous will vary. But there is always today in the world, almost in every collective life, an organized state which is deciding what you have to do. Correct or not? So, where is it gone? See the next thing. To eliminate poverty, not by the crude idea of equal distribution. See, there is two ways of eliminating poverty. One is that produce enough wealth, which probably is there already in the world, but distribute that wealth properly.
Communism.
Huh?
Communism.
What?
Communism.
Socialism.
Okay.
Right? Extreme form is communism. So now, to distribute wealth, when Nehru was asked this idea that let us distribute our wealth, he said in India you will be distributing poverty because there is not enough wealth to distribute everywhere, right? So first we have to create wealth. Then that wealth has to be distributed. So there are many countries which do not create enough wealth. They depend very much on others. And there are many countries also where there is enough wealth, but it is not distributed properly. But as a matter of fact, the assets of the world are more than enough for the whole population of the world. It is this total lack of distribution, right, which is today the main problem. And if somebody is not producing enough wealth, well, you have to help them and not do like what Trump said, call that a shithole of the African nations. You know, he used that word.
I know.
It is very wrong. It is. His business was to help them to stand on their own feet. And once they have stood on their own feet, then it's all right. Correct. So anyway, so to eliminate poverty, not by the crude idea of, but the whole, to equalize opportunity and capacity as far as possible through universal education and training, again by means of the organized state, is the fundamental idea of modern socialism. So you see now, we are all saying universal education, universal education. Look, in India, even today, I don't know the percentage, but a very big percent don't have even the opportunities to go to school. Now they are trying, and it is becoming easier because of the digital movement that is taking place. But unless the state intervenes, there is no chance whatsoever that all the citizens of a country will have universal education. Correct? And universal employment. You see, tomorrow the budget is going to be presented. job creation. This is the slogan that is there. And it's a very strange thing. With digitalization and mechanization, job creation is becoming difficult. Because what a human being was doing, now a machine is doing. Correct? So if you go on doing this, you are reducing this. If one is very highly developed and intellectually aware, then one doesn't seek a job, one develops one's mind but then if you must have money to start with. And that is why this is a problem which has to be, this job creation. So make in India skill development. Yesterday and day before yesterday, Narendra Modi said, make in India doesn't mean American companies will come and make in India. They might teach us, but we will make it in India. Then we are getting jobs. Otherwise, you come, you do wonderful things and we are happy, right? That will not help us.
But there are two factors, outsourcing and brain drain.
You see, now, thanks to Trump, because of his immigration policy, I read it yesterday, somebody sent me, many talented Indians who went to America, have lived there 25 years, 30 years, very capable, learned skills, are coming back. That will be beneficial to India,
Yes.
right? We have to give them the right opportunity, scope and all that. If we do that, it will be a tremendous benefit to India. So that brain drain can be a benefit to us, right? And that brain drain was necessary at one stage because India did not have the technical capacities for learning. Now that they have got that, if they come back, it will be very useful, right? So, so the fundamental idea is the state has to control. Now I would like to ask you this question. Is it possible without state control to give universal education, to give job opportunities to everybody? Or the state has to come in?
At present, I think not.
In the present state of human consciousness, no. Right? You look at a big company, generally, we don't generalize, but most often, they want people who are capable, who increase their profits, right? But what about those who are physically handicapped, sometimes mentally handicapped? They also have to live. They also would like to have some dignity where they earn their money, isn't it? So you have to keep some space for them. But if my main idea is profit, then I say you go. So this is a idea where the state has to impose itself. And so now that is being debated. Where it will go, I do not know. Whether the government has the right to step into private companies and tell them what they should do in certain cases. Not too much, but somewhat. Mm-hmm. So, again, what is your answer? Because private companies have not only one, or mainly one, and that is profit. Undoubtedly, they do wonderful things. And they give a fair amount of jobs. Because when they do. But at the same time, should some government control be put in there?
That's not the ideal solution.
It is not an ideal solution. But in the present condition,
I would say yes.
you see, ideal condition is on both sides. The big companies should shift their movement towards not only making profit, right? So that is one part of the ideal. And then the other part of the ideal is the state will interfere as little as possible and only make suggestions. So that is where socialism comes in. And always you must remember that socialism is associated with the state. It imposes, it compels, right? And universal education, those of us who have the money, we can go and study in Doon school, in good school, in this school. The poor villagers, they have absolutely no chance, no. And education is very costly. In Doon school, I think you have to pay 1 lakh per month or even more. Ashram is 5,000 per year. And if you are staying in the boarding, 500 rupees per month or 1,000 rupees per month. It is nothing, it's nominal. Right? So the important thing that I am trying to say is that liberty is a very powerful force. It worked, but it did not bring about equality. And in order to bring about equality, the state had to come in, and the idea of equality is associated with socialism. And socialism demands that the state should take over. Now, if you take over right till the extreme, then it is what you call communism. But communism has got some other things also. Communism is purely materialist. It doesn't believe in God. It doesn't believe in anything else. Socialism can believe in God and also believe in equality, right? But they believe that the God in the human being is still asleep, and that's why I have to impose and bring about equality. If the God in us was awake, equality would automatically come, right? So that change, as you said, has to be from within. But if you wait for within, then you have to wait forever or for a very long time. So, now when you carry socialism to its logical conclusion, there is an unease. Because we have tasted freedom, we have seen the value of freedom, so we try to make a compromise. And that is what leads to what is called democratic socialism. So the very next sentence, democratic socialism still clings indeed to the 19th century ideal of political freedom. It insists on the equal right of all in the state to choose, judge, and change their own governors. But all other liberty it is ready to sacrifice to its own central idea. So this is political liberty. But when these inequalities are very great, then the state has to come in. So you see, in political liberty, you vote once in 4 years, I vote once in 5 years. When I want to bring equality, then I have to, not only that, I have to put some kind of pressure on the state to see that equality is brought about. And the state will put pressure on the individuals, either by taxing or by some kind of methods. They will put pressure. And this is not the ideal solution, absolutely. But in the present state of human nature, socialism is needed. If you carry it too far, it becomes the freedom of the individual is lost. But since we have tasted freedom, we want democratic socialism. So today there are two forms of government almost all over the world: democratic socialist or socialistic democratic. It simply means the weightage is slightly different. In socialistic democratic, socialism and equality are more important than liberty. In democratic socialistic, liberty is more important than equality. The United States is democratic socialist. Now they become socialist. I got a figure yesterday. The poverty line, people living below the poverty line, huge number, even in the United States. So that is unequal distribution. Now, inevitably, the state has to intervene, and then it becomes socialistic. But since it has tasted freedom all these centuries, it is democratic socialist. Under Indira Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, India was socialistic democratic. All the centers of production, steel, this, that, everything was controlled by the government. Today, Narendra Modi has realized that it has to be a mix of the two. Because government control, those who are working, they are secure. You work for 30 years, after 30 years or 25 years, you get your pension. Unless you do something very stupid, you will not be sacked. In a private company, if you are not working well, you are sacked on the next day itself. Because their aim is profit. But whatever their aim, profit, they are producing wealth. And only when you have produced wealth, you can distribute wealth. So Sri Aurobindo says, he has written in one of those books called India's Rebirth, small paragraph, do not disturb the capitalists beyond a certain point, right? Because you have to produce wealth. And that desire to make profits is one of the most powerful drives of a human being. I remember in the ashram, Udar told me this story while going to Madras in a car, that many of the ashram departments are not working well, not doing their job the way they should do. And the main reason, as they found, is that they are absolutely secure. Whether they work well or they don't work well, their food, clothing, housing, everything is looked after. So Udar proposed to Mother that, Mother, we should pay money to all these workers. You will see what happens. Mother said, yes, you are right from that point of view, but then it is not an ashram anymore. I wanted everyone to work with that same enthusiasm, not with the profit motive, but by offering it to the divine. Now that is perfectly all right in ashram, but I don't think Narendra Modi or Trump can speak of this ideal at the national level. It is idealistic. We might hope to aim for that, right? So Sabka Saath and Sabka Vikas is all right. Make in India, all that is very good. But it needs a spiritual awakening when one does all one's work with no expectation of return, right? So today I forgot to bring my YouTube. Happiness is something like that. Is a wonderful mathematical formula. The more you divide it, it multiplies. Is it true or not?
Beautiful.
I found it very beautiful.
Very beautiful.
The more you divide your happiness, share your happiness with everybody else, it multiplies. You keep it all to yourself, it doesn't work. So this is a very beautiful idea, right? And this is verging on the border of spirituality. Without using those terms, right? It is surely a sign that you are happy, I am happy. All of you are happy, I am happy. That's a very good sign, no? You have some...
I was just saying that the real solution for these things is a change of heart.
Change of consciousness, as Mother says.
No, that's... That unless the masses are spiritualized and even the corporates and everybody, the materialism, that hold goes away and they are really feel in their heart of hearts that everybody is one. Until then it cannot change.
Absolutely. So change of consciousness, and that is why for anything that you go to Mother, I mean, I'm speaking of my own personal example and everybody else's. She says, if you are on this level, no solution possible. Shift. Raise your consciousness. For that, you have to become aware of consciousness and move from the physical and vital level to the higher levels. So for her, the only answer is change of consciousness. Sri Aurobindo and the mother. All the rest are temporary, might be needed, but they are not going to be lasting. You have to create that awareness, which is another word of consciousness. And if that is done, then the problem will automatically be solved. Right? Whether in the ashram or outside the ashram, the same principle applies. But if we succeed here and Auroville succeeds, it will have its impact. That vibration will have it. And therefore, Mother tried a small unit where this could be done. But as Mother herself said, do you think I came to this earth to create an ashram? She is working on a much bigger scale. And today there are hundreds and thousands, I don't know millions, but hundreds and thousands of people all over the world who are receptive, opening out, and sometimes working on the individual level and sometimes working on the collective level. And that is the future of humanity. So shall we stop here or? So if you have any questions you can ask, which you would answer publicly.
I feel that Mother gave a very simple formula for Auroville, which doesn't, thank you, which doesn't require a spiritual...
Start again, don't touch anything.
I want to say that my understanding is Mother gave a triple formula for Auroville, which doesn't demand spirituality as such, as I interpret it, but that she said 3 things should be done. The children should be put in the school. Can you hear me?
Not clear, not clear. You can.
She's saying that Mother said 3 things should be done.
For Auroville.
1, for Auroville. The children should be put in the schools.
The second is the sick in the hospital.
The sick have to be put in the hospital?
Yes.
I suppose she meant including the mentally ill also.
Including?
Including the mentally ill.
Mentally ill.
But the third is, I think, the most decisive, and that is that the trainable people should be in training centers. Vocational training.
Vocational training.
Yeah. I don't know where this reference is. I would like to know that, keep it in mind. But anyway, I felt that this is so significant because if people are happy choosing some activity that they like to do that will enhance their consciousness and capacity, plus it will give money, then you won't have these social problems like smoking, drinking, and crime and all this, because people will be well adjusted. This is what I'm wondering if is behind this Skill India move. I was really thrilled when I saw that. He plans to train like millions of people, I think even in the textile industry alone. Modi, no?
Modi
No, I
plans
understand.
to train millions of people.
You see, I have only one doubt, because those who are comfortable, those who are happy, those who have enough money, many of them drink and smoke the most. Right? So happiness on the physical plane does not automatically get you out of bad habits.
But sir, I would say that it's because they aren't truly happy. In other words, they have not found the thing which is rewarding. It doesn't mean that somebody who's making a lot of money is necessarily doing what his heart or soul want to do in life, no? I think many people...
But that means opening out to some higher power. right? It is only then that you are happy, right? And that does not depend on wealth. A reasonable amount of money is needed to survive, but the villagers are sometimes very happy. In fact, much happier than those who are living in the towns and who have enough money and wealth. So there is a psychological problem that has to be handled. See, the first thing that we must understand is that it is indispensable, I agree, that the basic conditions of life should be given for the first step in happiness. But that will not give you happiness. That alone will not give you happiness. There has to be something else. And that something else will have to be a higher life. And that is why in the foundation of Indian culture, he clearly speaks of 3 types of happiness that people are seeking, or civilizations have been speaking. One is what he called modern Europe, material happiness. You get more and more acquisitions and you are happy. Another is the ancient Greeks, intellectual happiness. They are happy with if they can read and write and exchange ideas. And the third one is spiritual happiness. And there Sri Aurobindo says that happiness that will last and reliable is only spiritual happiness. These will give you some happiness, temporary.